And in addition to the budget, if that wasn't already complicated enough, the district's Board of Education is also working on their plan for a $1.8 billion bond, which voters will decide on May 20th. If it is approved, most of that money will be used to modernize 3 high schools, Jefferson, Wells, and Cleveland, as well as to make improvements at other buildings like seismic upgrades or replacing a roof or an HVAC system. And last week, the board was scheduled to discuss how to save money on those high school renovations, but that discussion was taken off the agenda. Tonight, I spoke with board member Julia Brim-Edwards about that abrupt ending to that meeting and how the plan for that bond is coming together. I want to ask about the bond now, and the April 22nd meeting ended in a bit of an unusual way because on the agenda at first was an item where there was a memo from the COO, Dan Jung, where he had mentioned, or in which he had mentioned that delaying construction plans and this seeking of cost savings in the high school modernization projects might actually make them more expensive. I know that you also wanted to bring up the Indian education program at Jefferson High School, which you did not get a chance to do.
I think it's disappointing that it's unilaterally got taken off, something that the board passed as part of a resolution. So I'm going to just submit some comments for the record.
Thank you. I think there's some disagreement on the interpretation of the words, but yeah.
Right, you can read the resolution. It says that.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Can you walk me just through your understanding of what happened with that discussion?
Sure. I was really disappointed that sort of unilaterally an agenda item got taken off because earlier in the spring, I had offered an amendment that accompanied the cost reduction direction to staff that said, we want the staff to come back at 3 board meetings in the spring and give us a progress report. From my perspective, voters deserve to know what they're voting on. Give us a progress report. From my perspective, there were some really important things for us to discuss. One, the seismic issues and the questions that parents had about prioritization, how much money was going to be allocated to that. There also appeared to the meeting before that another $200 million was going to be available. That could go to critical improvements and repairs to elementary and middle schools. And I thought that was an important piece of information for the community to have, and also to talk about how would that be prioritized, again, looking at the seismic updates. In addition, as part of the cost reductions, the Jefferson modernization basically eliminated the Indian Ed program, which has been in Jefferson High School for a long time, completely from the plans. And I believed, and the Indian Native parents and families and staff were expecting to come to that meeting to ask sort of what the path was for them to find a new home, since it wasn't clear that they had that. We shouldn't be stiff-arming parents of the community when we're asking them for a lot of money.
Yeah. And do you think that's what happened in the last meeting?
I felt the discussion was shut down, even though both the board received an agenda that said it was on it. It was on the agenda that got publicly posted, and the resolution said it would be discussed and we'd have an opportunity to ask questions.
Why should people vote for this bond when the details are not yet laid out right now?
I think people should vote for the bond. I've been a PPS parent, I'm a PPS graduate. Our buildings are old, and we know that our high schools need to be modernized so that students across the city have equitable classroom spaces that are preparing them for college, career, and life. We know that in addition, some of the funding in the bond will pay for critical technology improvements. It'll pay for updated curriculum so kids have up-to-date textbooks and other materials. It also, there's a very important component of it, which is for critical improvements and repairs. So all the elementary and middle schools, which average about 75 years old, that if they need a new roof, if the plumbing fails, if they need changes in sort of, say, the electrical system or the HVAC systems, that there'll be resources for it. Those are all very important reasons to vote for the bond. And I also think it's a very legitimate position for the community to take and board members to take, is we want to make sure that we're building our high schools in a cost-effective way. And also, it's a very, I think, reasonable thing for parents to ask. We have students in schools that are seismically unsafe if there's an earthquake, and how are you prioritizing it in this bond? I think those are very legitimate questions.
And I did also ask the district why that discussion on the high school modernization projects was taken off the agenda last week. A PPS spokesperson told me today that it was meant to only be a written update, not a discussion, but it was listed on the agenda incorrectly, so it was removed. Brim-Edwards told me that explanation is not accurate. As of tonight, the board has not yet planned when it will next discuss the bond or those projects, and the election on that bond question is 3 weeks away from today.